Welcome, dear listener. Tonight, you will step quietly into a church that has held its breath for centuries, where sunlight pours through colored glass, painting the floor in gentle hues, and the air carries the faint scent of beeswax, aged wood, and whispered prayers. As you walk softly along the worn stone aisles, notice the dust motes floating in the light, the curves of carved pews, and the delicate flicker of candles in distant niches, each detail holding the memory of countless hands, voices, and silent moments folded into time. Let your shoulders relax, your thoughts drift, and your breathing slow, as the stillness of this sacred space begins to mingle with your own presence, guiding you gently into a world where every shadow, every echo, and every subtle movement invites calm, reflection, and quiet wonder. You step onto the worn cobblestones that lead to the church, the air around you carrying a faint whisper of damp earth and old stone, as if the world itself pauses here, remembering centuries that have quietly drifted past. The church's facade rises before you, pale and weathered, sunlight spilling over its carved arches, each one etched with patterns that have softened under the patient hands of wind and rain, leaving shadows that sway like gentle ghosts. As you push the heavy door, your fingertips brush the cool, rough wood, and a faint aroma of beeswax and mildew greets you, a mingling of past devotion and lingering stillness that wraps around you like a soft shawl. Inside, the air feels different, almost suspended, warmer than the outside, yet carrying a hush, as if the walls themselves inhale slowly with each visitor, and you feel your own breathing soften to match their rhythm. Your eyes trace the worn pews, polished unevenly by the careful passage of hands long gone, the scent of aged wood rising to meet the lingering faint perfume of dried flowers, petals pressed between the cracks where no one notices anymore. The sunlight from tall, slender windows spills across the flagstones in fractured patterns, painting soft rectangles of warmth onto your skin, and you notice the faint chill beneath the arches where shadow and stone converse silently in quiet patience. A small candle flickers on the altar, its flame trembling with a delicate hum of life, sending tiny sparks of light dancing across gilded carvings that gleam with a softness only revealed to the patient eye, inviting your gaze to linger with gentle insistence. You kneel at the first pew, fingers brushing the carved designs, tracing the shapes with slow curiosity, feeling the tiny grooves and ridges, as though your hands can read the prayers embedded there, each one folded into the grain of the wood itself. The scent of candle smoke rises, mingling with the must of the stone walls and a hint of lavender from dried garlands, a quiet symphony of smells that carries you further inside yourself, past the noise of the world, into a space where time seems to pause. Every sound here is softened, the gentle creak of the floor under your weight, the subtle hiss of air through the narrow vents, the faint rustle of unseen wings above, all blending into a lullaby that invites you to slow, to listen, to simply be. You notice the silence of the church is not emptiness, but a presence, a patience older than memory, as if every beam and brick remembers the voices that once rose in song, and yet now it welcomes you quietly, with no hurry or expectation. Your gaze lingers on the high altar, gilded edges dulled by years, the smooth stones beneath, polished by the touch of countless footsteps, reflecting the light in a soft glow that seems to pulse gently like a heart quietly keeping its own time. A breeze slips through a cracked window, carrying with it the distant scent of moss and rain-soaked ivy, brushing across your cheeks with a whisper that feels like a story half remembered, an invitation to move slowly, to let the weight of the world fall away. You find yourself tracing the edges of the stained glass, where faint images of angels and saints glow in muted colors, each figure bending slightly under the centuries, their expressions softened, their gestures gentle, as though inviting you to step closer and linger. The air carries a subtle warmth here, a balance of sunlight and shadow, the gentle hum of the stones holding it all together, creating a space that feels suspended between yesterday and tomorrow, a quiet harbor for your wandering thoughts. You close your eyes for a moment, listening to the soft echoes of your own heartbeat mingling with the church's subtle sighs, imagining the prayers of generations folding gently around you, a delicate embrace that makes the stillness feel tender rather than lonely. Your fingers linger on the pew as you rise, the texture grounding you, reminding you of the slow passage of hands and time. The human presence that once filled this space now whispered in the curve of a wooden edge, the shadow of a smile in the polished grain. Walking toward the back, you notice the choir stalls, small and unadorned, each one marked by the subtle wear of knees pressed in devotion, the scent of old wood rising faintly, the memory of voices that once soared now resting in quiet dignity. A final glance upward shows the vaulted ceiling, arches rising like gentle waves frozen mid-motion, shadows curling softly along the stone. And for a moment you feel a profound peace, as if the church itself is breathing with you, carrying your awareness like a quiet tide. You step back toward the doorway, pausing to feel the threshold beneath your feet, the cool stone mingling with the warmth of lingering sunlight, a gentle reminder that the world outside continues, but here, inside the church that held its breath forever, time itself seems to exhale slowly, patiently, with you. You drift along the aisle, your footsteps softened by the thick layer of dust that cushions the stone beneath, carrying a faint warmth from sunlight streaming through the colored glass, each hue gently brushing your skin like memory made visible. The air hums with quiet echoes, the subtle vibration of centuries pressing softly against your senses, and you feel your own heartbeat slow, matching the measured rhythm of a space that has learned to wait without hurry or expectation. Your fingertips graze the edges of the pews, noticing the tiny grooves and divots that mark generations of reverent touch. And each one seems to carry a whisper of old prayers, the delicate imprint of hands that lingered longer than the passing day. A faint scent of incense lingers, subtle and sweet, mingling with the earthy aroma of stone warmed by sunlight, and as you inhale, it seems to wrap around your chest like a gentle blanket, softening the weight of your thoughts. Looking upward, the ceiling arches above you in pale stone, high and luminous, carrying a subtle warmth that mingles with the quiet shadows. The curve of each arch softened by age, as if the building itself has sighed and settled into a long, patient breath. The wooden beams overhead hum with quiet history, their surfaces smooth under the touch of your eyes, and you imagine the tiny vibrations of sound that have traveled through them over decades, carrying song, laughter, and whispered confessions in a delicate, unseen current. You pause near the lectern, tracing the carved letters of ancient prayers with your gaze, imagining the careful hands that once pressed ink to parchment here, and the scent of dried ink mingles in your mind with the warmth of candle wax that still lingers faintly on the stone. A single candle flickers in a side niche, its flame trembling with a gentle insistence, casting soft shadows that stretch like fingers across the wall, revealing details of carved angels whose faces are worn smooth, their expressions serene as though patiently waiting for you to notice. You notice the dust motes in the sunlight, tiny dancers suspended in the golden shafts, moving without hurry, and their slow, drifting motion seems to echo the quiet pulse of the space itself, a rhythm that invites you to slow your own breathing in quiet accord. The smell of aged wood rises faintly as you move toward the choir stalls, carrying hints of wax polish and the faint residue of voices long silenced, each stall cradling the memory of song, a gentle echo that seems to linger beneath the smooth surfaces like a forgotten lullaby. Your hands brush the stone walls as you walk, rough and cool under your fingertips, and the texture carries a subtle message of endurance. Each scratch and groove a tiny chronicle of touch and time, a language written silently for those willing to pause and feel. The windows along the side of the nave filter the light in muted hues, and you let your eyes follow the soft spectrum, noticing how it pools across the floor and flickers on the altar. The colors breathing slowly with you, softening the edges of reality into something more dreamlike. You bend slightly to feel the cold of the stone under the pew, the chill mingling with the warmth of your hands, a quiet contrast that grounds you in this moment. And the sensation feels like a gentle reminder that even in stillness, the world beneath your touch is very much alive. A draft slips through a tiny crack, carrying the faint scent of rain and moss, brushing against your cheeks with a subtle insistence, and it feels as though the outside world is leaning in to touch this quiet sanctuary, acknowledging your presence without urgency or interruption. You linger near the altar rail, fingertips grazing the polished wood, the texture smooth and cool, and you imagine the countless souls who once knelt here, their whispered prayers absorbed into the fibers, leaving behind a soft warmth that hums quietly beneath the surface. The silence of the space is full rather than empty, a gentle resonance that caresses the ears, and you realize that every shadow, every faint echo, every grain of dust participates in a delicate symphony of waiting, a melody that asks only for your attention and calm. You allow your gaze to drift over the faded frescoes along the walls, muted colors depicting angels, saints, and quiet miracles, their edges softened by time, and you notice the gentle curves and lines that seem to sway slightly in the dim light, as if breathing with the church itself. The air tastes faintly of stone and lavender, carrying a warmth that feels intimate, and you take a deep, unhurried breath, letting it fill you as you imagine the countless quiet moments that have passed here. The stillness shared by those who came before and those who linger now. You move toward the rear of the nave, brushing past the carved pew ends, noticing the smooth hollows left by fingertips that have long since vanished, and you feel a strange comfort in the connection across time, as if their patience and care linger, welcoming your own gentle touch. Finally, you pause at the doorway, feeling the threshold beneath your feet, the cool stone holding the memory of sunlight and shadow, and for a long moment, You let the church's quiet embrace seep into your awareness, a soft exhale of centuries that seems to carry you gently forward. You step slowly along the narrow side aisle, your fingers brushing the cool stone columns, feeling their subtle imperfections and roughened edges, and each touch seems to carry the quiet weight of centuries, a silent testimony of hands that pressed against them long ago. The faint scent of aged parchment drifts from a small alcove, mingling with the warmth of candle wax, and you imagine the long hours devoted to copying prayers and hymns. Each stroke deliberate, each word a soft echo of devotion that lingers in the air. Sunlight spills through a tall, slender window, fractured into muted ribbons of gold and rose, and you notice how the light pools gently across the floor, tracing patterns that shift with time, as if the church itself were breathing softly in rhythm with the day. Your footsteps disturb the dust in the quiet aisle, sending tiny motes dancing in the light, their slow movement reminding you of tiny stars suspended in space, and you find yourself mesmerized, letting the delicate, drifting motion carry your thoughts away like a lullaby. The stone floor beneath your hands and knees feels cool and grounding, carrying with it the faint warmth of countless footsteps, and you imagine the congregation that once moved here in quiet procession, their presence preserved in the gentle hum of memory embedded in the walls. You pause near a carved relief, tracing the smooth curves of a saint's robe with your eyes, noticing the subtle indentations left by the passing of time, and the shadows that cling to the edges create a soft, breathing texture that feels alive with quiet patience. A gentle draft slips through a narrow window, carrying with it the scent of moss and rain-soaked earth, brushing across your cheeks like a whispered invitation to linger. And you feel the church's quiet acknowledgement of your presence, neither demanding nor hurried, simply present. You kneel briefly, pressing your palms to the cold stone of the floor, and the texture grounds you, connecting your awareness to centuries of human presence. Each touch an invisible bridge to those who knelt here before you, leaving behind a subtle warmth beneath your hands. The flicker of candlelight in a distant niche dances along the walls, illuminating details you may have missed, a delicate glow that softens every surface, revealing the gentle undulations of carved angels' wings and the faint traces of pigments that time has faded but never erased. Your gaze drifts upward to the high ceiling, where arches curve gracefully like frozen waves, and you notice how the light and shadow mingle there, creating a serene interplay that feels like the slow, measured pulse of the church itself, breathing in quiet, deliberate harmony. You move closer to the altar, noticing the subtle scent of wax and stone mingling with a faint hint of lavender, and the tactile sensation of polished wood under your fingertips seems to carry the memories of careful hands that tended here long ago, a soft rhythm of devotion. The faint creak of the floor beneath your steps blends with the soft whisper of air through the vents, and the sound feels like a slow, measured heartbeat, each note echoing in the stillness, as if the building itself were keeping time with your presence, inviting patience and stillness. A small patch of sunlight illuminates a corner where faded flowers rest, pressed between pages of forgotten hymnals, and their delicate petals exude a subtle fragrance that mingles with the must of old stone, evoking a sensation both tender and transient, like a half-remembered dream. You pause by a side chapel, its walls lined with simple wooden statues, each one worn smooth in places where fingers once lingered. and you imagine the quiet prayers that were offered here. Each whispered request, a ripple in the stillness that never quite fades from the air. The air feels warmer here, a soft embrace against your skin, carrying with it the subtle vibration of history, the quiet weight of accumulated presence, and you feel yourself leaning into that warmth, letting it wash gently over your senses, softening every thought into a slower rhythm. Your eyes follow the intricate patterns in the stone floor, tracing the interlacing lines that have softened with age, and you notice how the light bends across them, creating a shifting tapestry that seems to hum quietly beneath your gaze, a muted song that asks only for patient attention. A faint breeze stirs a thin curtain by a side window, brushing your cheek, and the touch feels like the echo of a hand long gone, a delicate acknowledgement of presence, a soft invitation to remain, to notice, to breathe in sync with the timeless calm of this sacred space. You let your gaze wander over the altar rail, polished smooth by countless hands, and you imagine the souls who knelt here, each leaving a trace so subtle it can only be felt in quiet observation, and the warmth of their devotion seems to linger faintly under your touch. The silence of the church surrounds you fully, not empty but complete, a gentle resonance that fills every corner with soft insistence, reminding you that this space holds more than stone and wood. It holds memory, patience, and a quiet, enduring heartbeat that invites your own to slow. You take a final slow step toward the rear of the nave, feeling the cool stone underfoot, the texture solid and grounding, and for a long moment you let yourself absorb the gentle presence of all that has passed through here, allowing the church's soft exhale to cradle you like a memory unfolding slowly. You wander deeper into the church, feeling the subtle change in the air as it grows cooler near the stone pillars, carrying with it a faint scent of damp moss and aged wood, and you sense the quiet patience of this place, watching you gently. Your fingertips graze the smooth surface of a polished pew, and the worn edges tell a story of countless hands that lingered here, each touch softening the wood, leaving behind an invisible warmth that hums beneath your skin like a memory half remembered. Sunlight pours through a tall window, fractured by delicate lead lines into pale amber and soft rose, and the light spills across the flagstones in warm patches, making the dust motes shimmer like tiny stars suspended in a slow, drifting galaxy of calm. You pause near the side chapel, noticing the faint scent of incense lingering in the corners, its sweetness mingling with the subtle aroma of stone warmed by the day, creating a perfume of quiet devotion that feels alive in the stillness around you. The gentle creak of the floor beneath your steps blends with the soft sigh of air through narrow vents, and each sound seems to belong to the church itself, carrying a patient rhythm that invites your breathing to slow and settle into a gentle, meditative pace. Your gaze drifts to a faded fresco along the wall, its muted colors depicting angels bending in quiet reverence, and you notice how the paint has softened and blurred over time. The figures leaning toward you with a subtle intimacy that feels like a whispered story. You trace the edges of carved reliefs along the nave, feeling the grooves in your imagination as your eyes follow each curve, and the delicate craftsmanship speaks of careful hands and steady hearts that worked here with patience, leaving traces that endure like faint echoes in stone. A candle flickers softly in a distant niche, its flame trembling and breathing gently, casting shadows that curl along the walls, revealing the faint details of worn carvings, and giving the impression that even the smallest movements of light carry a quiet life within this sacred space. You kneel briefly at the altar rail, brushing your fingers along its smooth surface, and the texture feels like a bridge across centuries, connecting your presence to the countless others who knelt here, each of them leaving behind a whisper of devotion folded delicately into the wood. The air carries a subtle warmth, tinged with the faint fragrance of dried flowers resting in small alcoves, petals pressed carefully between stone and wall, and their gentle perfume mingles with the coolness of the floor, creating a layered sensory tapestry that draws you deeper into stillness. Your footsteps echo faintly as you walk toward the choir stalls, noticing the gentle wear of the wood, polished unevenly by countless knees and hands. And you imagine the voices that once rose here, harmonies drifting into the vaulted ceiling, their memory lingering in soft resonance. A breeze slips through a narrow crack in the window, brushing lightly against your cheek, carrying with it the faint scent of rain on moss and the distant echo of rustling leaves, as if the outside world leans in to greet you quietly, without hurry, without expectation. You pause at a small alcove, where a candle rests beside a carved statue, its light trembling across delicate features, and the stone seems to exhale softly, as though acknowledging your presence, letting you feel a patient welcome that stretches across time in gentle arcs. The polished floor beneath your feet reflects the soft sunlight and candlelight, creating a shifting pattern of warmth and shadow. And you notice how the contrast of light and cool stone carries a subtle rhythm, a gentle pulse that invites you to follow its quiet lead. Your eyes drift to the high altar, gilded edges muted with age, and you feel the subtle pull of history in the smoothness of the wood and stone, as though the space itself remembers the careful hands, the soft footsteps, and the whispered prayers that linger invisibly around you. The scent of wax and stone, mingled with the faint aroma of dried herbs and incense, rises gently around you, and you breathe slowly, letting each inhalation carry the memory of devotion and care, a soft, lingering presence that anchors you in the calm of this space. You run your fingers lightly over the carved pew ends, tracing the worn grooves left by generations, and each indentation seems to hum quietly beneath your touch, a gentle resonance of human presence, patience, and reverence that has settled into the fabric of the church over countless years. The sunlight filters through the stained glass, painting soft patterns on the floor that shift with the movement of the day. And you notice how each hue seems to breathe slowly in the stillness, casting warmth and color in a rhythm that mirrors the quiet pulse of your own heart. A faint murmur of air drifts through the arches, carrying the scent of rain from outside, and the coolness brushes against your skin like a delicate caress, reminding you that the world continues beyond these walls, while here, inside, time moves with a measured, patient grace. You take a final, slow step along the aisle, pausing to let the stillness settle around you, feeling the polished stone beneath your feet and the warmth of sunlight and candlelight mingling softly. And in that quiet moment, you sense the church's breath, long held, now gently shared with you. You wander toward the side aisle, where the stone walls are cool under your fingertips, and the faint scent of aged wood mingles with the subtle warmth of sunlight, creating a gentle contrast that feels like the quiet memory of a long-forgotten embrace. The air here hums softly, carrying whispers of centuries past, as if the stones themselves remember the voices and prayers that once echoed within these walls, their resonance lingering faintly, wrapping around you in a calm rhythm that invites your breathing to slow. Your eyes trace the faint carvings along the pew ends, each curve polished smooth by countless hands, and you notice how the grooves seem to hum under your gaze, a subtle vibration of human presence folded delicately into the grains of the wood. Sunlight pours through the stained glass, fracturing into delicate hues of amber, rose, and soft green, and the light spills across the flagstones in gentle pools, illuminating the dust motes drifting slowly, like tiny fragments of memory suspended in the warm, quiet air. A gentle draft slips through a narrow window, carrying the faint scent of moss and rain, brushing lightly across your cheeks, and you imagine the outside world leaning in to touch this silent sanctuary, a quiet acknowledgement of presence that moves with patience and grace. And the texture hums softly beneath your touch, a bridge across centuries, connecting your awareness to a long, quiet devotion. And you breathe in slowly, letting the layered fragrances anchor you in the moment, carrying your senses gently along the soft currents of memory, the patterns shifting slowly as if the church itself were breathing, a measured, patient rhythm that hums quietly beneath your awareness. A candle flickers in a distant corner, its flame trembling like a slow heartbeat, casting delicate shadows across worn carvings, and you feel the movement as a subtle life, a quiet presence that does not demand attention but offers its gentle acknowledgement to your quiet observation. You run your fingers lightly over the smooth stone of the floor, cool and grounding beneath your touch, and you imagine the footsteps that have pressed here over centuries, each step leaving behind a faint warmth and a subtle imprint that mingles with the slow pulse of the space. The soft murmur of air through narrow vents carries the faintest echo of voices long gone, and you feel your own heartbeat slow to match the rhythm, a gentle communion with those who once moved here, their quiet devotion lingering in the walls, the wood, and the stones. You bend slightly to observe the carved reliefs along the side walls, noticing angels and saints rendered in delicate curves, their features softened by centuries of light and shadow, and their serene expressions seem to lean toward you, inviting a quiet moment of reflection and calm. A small patch of sunlight illuminates pressed flowers resting in a side niche, petals faded yet still delicate, and the subtle fragrance mingles with the cool stone, evoking a sensation of transient beauty, a soft whisper of life preserved in silence and memory. Your footsteps echo faintly as you move toward the choir stalls, and you notice the gentle wear of the wooden seats, polished unevenly by centuries of hands and knees, and the faint scent of old wood mingles with wax, carrying the quiet echo of long-ago song. You pause near a window, tracing the delicate lead lines in the glass with your gaze, noticing how the muted colors bend the sunlight into soft shapes, and each subtle shift seems to breathe slowly, a calm rhythm mirrored in your own relaxed awareness. The air carries a faint warmth here, mingling with the cool of stone and the subtle scent of dried herbs, and you let it wash over your skin, noticing the delicate interplay of temperature and texture, a gentle reminder of the slow, enduring heartbeat of this sanctuary. Your hands brush the smooth edges of the pews, feeling the grooves left by countless fingertips, and each subtle indentation seems to hum faintly beneath your touch. A quiet echo of devotion folded into the wood, a lingering presence that welcomes your attentive awareness. Sunlight moves slowly across the floor, casting shifting patterns of color and warmth. And you notice how each patch of light seems to pulse softly, a gentle rhythm that carries your eyes along in a relaxed, wandering path, drawing you into the calm flow of the church's quiet life. You breathe in deeply, savoring the layered scents of stone, wax, and faint lavender, and the subtle mixture wraps around you like a soft shawl, grounding you in this moment of stillness, a reminder that here time moves gently, patiently, with no hurry or interruption. Finally, you step back toward the nave, pausing to let the quiet settle around you, feeling the cool stone beneath your feet and the warm sunlight mingling with shadows. And for a long, gentle moment, you allow the church's enduring calm to seep fully into your awareness. Like a soft exhale held for centuries, you walk along the nave, fingers brushing the cool, textured stone of the pillars, feeling the subtle grooves left by centuries of devotion. And each gentle touch seems to carry a quiet memory, a whisper of hands that once lingered here. The faint scent of beeswax rises from a flickering candle, mingling with the warmth of sunlight falling through stained glass. And you inhale slowly, letting the layered fragrances wrap around your senses like a soft, familiar blanket of patience. Sunlight fractures into muted colors as it passes through the glass, pooling across the worn flagstones. And you notice the slow dance of light and shadow, each shift carrying a quiet rhythm that mirrors your own relaxed heartbeat, guiding your awareness gently forward. Your fingertips graze the smooth, polished wood of a pew, worn unevenly by countless hands and knees. And you imagine the soft echo of prayers that settled here, each one pressing lightly into the grain, leaving behind an imperceptible warmth that hums quietly beneath your touch. A faint draft slips through a narrow window, carrying the distant scent of rain-soaked earth and moss, brushing lightly across your skin, and the gentle touch feels like a whisper from the world outside, acknowledging your presence with serene patience and subtle insistence. You pause near a carved relief, tracing the contours of a saint's robe with your gaze, noting how the curves have softened over time, and the subtle play of shadow across the surface gives the impression of movement, as though the figure leans toward you in quiet invitation. The arches above curve gracefully, high and luminous, and you notice how the soft light shifts with the passing hour, casting delicate patterns across the walls, as if the church itself breathes slowly, inhaling sunlight and exhaling calm, carrying your awareness along in gentle rhythm. A candle flickers in a side niche, its flame trembling like a gentle heartbeat, casting shadows that stretch along the stone, and you feel a quiet presence in the movement, a soft acknowledgement that life continues here, subtle and patient, even in stillness. You kneel briefly, pressing your palms to the cool stone floor, and the texture grounds you, connecting your body to the accumulated presence of those who knelt here before, leaving behind traces of warmth and devotion folded delicately into the stones themselves. The faint murmur of air through the vents carries a delicate echo of voices long silenced, and you notice how the space responds to your presence. Every shadow, every carved edge, every polished surface participating in a quiet symphony that asks only for observation and stillness. Your gaze drifts toward the high altar, gilded edges dulled by centuries, and you feel the subtle pull of history in the smooth wood and stone, as though each curve and corner holds the memory of hands that worked and prayed here with patient reverence. The scent of dried flowers rises faintly from a side alcove, mingling with the aroma of wax and stone, and you inhale slowly, letting the delicate fragrance settle around you, a gentle reminder that even in stillness, beauty and devotion persist quietly, like a half-remembered lullaby. You pause at the choir stalls, noticing the polished surfaces worn unevenly by generations, and the faint echo of voices once raised in harmony seems to linger in the wood, a soft resonance that threads through the silence, carrying warmth and memory across time. A sliver of sunlight illuminates a small niche where candles rest, and the flickering light casts gentle, moving shadows across carved angels whose features are softened by age. And you feel the subtle intimacy of their gaze, bending toward you in quiet acknowledgement. Your footsteps echo softly across the stone floor, muted by the thick dust, and each echo seems to carry a fragment of memory, a gentle layering of presence and time that folds around you, inviting you to move slowly and feel the rhythm of this long-held stillness. The warmth of sunlight mingles with the coolness of stone under your feet, creating a delicate contrast that carries a sensation of intimacy, as if the church itself is leaning toward you, offering its patient embrace while remaining entirely unhurried, soft, and enduring. Your fingers trace the edges of a carved pew, worn smooth by countless hands, and each groove seems to hum faintly beneath your touch, a gentle vibration that carries centuries of devotion, a quiet resonance folded into the wood, waiting to be felt with patience. Sunlight shifts gradually, moving across the floor and highlighting patterns in the stone that seem to pulse slowly. And you notice how the interplay of warmth and shadow mirrors the subtle rhythm of your own awareness, guiding you gently through the quiet of the space. You breathe in the layered scents of stone, wax, and faint lavender, letting them settle into your chest, and each inhalation seems to carry the memory of hands, prayers, and quiet footsteps, a soft, lingering presence that folds seamlessly into your own stillness. Finally, you pause near the back of the nave, feeling the cool stone beneath your feet and the soft warmth of sunlight mingling with shadows. And in that long, gentle moment, you allow the church's quiet breath to merge with your own, a tender exhale held for centuries. You step lightly along the aisle, feeling the subtle warmth of the stone beneath your feet, each movement echoing faintly in the stillness, and the gentle rhythm of your steps blends seamlessly with the quiet breath of the church around you. The scent of beeswax and old wood rises softly from the polished pews, mingling with the faint aroma of dried herbs resting in alcoves, and you inhale slowly, letting the layered fragrances settle into your chest like a gentle, lingering memory. Sunlight filters through the tall stained glass windows, casting muted ribbons of amber, rose, and pale green across the floor, and you notice how the colors shift slowly, illuminating the dust motes that drift lazily in the beams like tiny fragments of time suspended in air. Your fingertips graze the carved edges of the pews, worn smooth by countless hands, and each subtle groove seems to hum faintly beneath your touch, a quiet resonance that carries centuries of devotion folded gently into the wood, waiting for patient attention. A cool breeze drifts through a narrow crack in the window, brushing softly against your cheeks, and the faint scent of rain-soaked moss accompanies it, a delicate whisper from the world outside that acknowledges your presence without hurry, quietly blending with the stillness within. You pause near the side chapel, tracing the curves of a worn relief with your gaze, noticing how the shadows cling to the carved folds of robes and the softened edges of angels' faces, each detail bending slightly toward you, as if offering a quiet story in its patience. The arches above curve gracefully into the vaulted ceiling, high and luminous, and the soft interplay of light and shadow makes the stone seem almost alive, as if the building itself inhales slowly with the sun and exhales gently with every passing hour. A candle flickers in a distant niche, its tiny flame trembling as though breathing, and you notice how the shadows stretch and bend along the walls, illuminating the subtle textures of carved stone, creating a delicate interplay that feels like a quiet pulse of presence and warmth. You kneel briefly at the altar rail, resting your hands against the smooth wood, feeling the faint warmth left by countless others who knelt here long ago, and the subtle vibrations of devotion seem to linger beneath your fingertips, carrying a patient echo of human care. The faint murmur of air through vents and cracks carries with it the softest echoes of voices long silenced, and you feel your own heartbeat slow, matching the gentle rhythm of the space, a silent communion with generations who passed here, leaving traces folded in the stones. Your eyes drift to the high altar, gilded edges dulled by age, and the polished surfaces reflect fragments of sunlight in delicate, ever-shifting patterns, the subtle glow guiding your gaze along curves and carvings that seem to breathe softly, carrying the quiet presence of centuries. The aroma of candle smoke mingles with the faint scent of lavender resting in a side niche, and you breathe in slowly, letting the gentle fragrance settle around you, wrapping you in a calm, tender embrace that feels both intimate and timeless, as though the church remembers your presence. You pause at the choir stalls, noticing the polished wood worn by centuries of kneeling, and the faint memory of voices once raised in harmony seems to linger there, a delicate hum threading through the stillness, as though the walls themselves hold the echo of quiet devotion. Sunlight shifts gradually across the nave, highlighting patterns in the floor and dust motes drifting lazily in the beams, and you notice how the movement is slow and deliberate, a rhythm that invites your eyes and thoughts to wander gently, following the quiet pulse of light and shadow. A faint draft brushes your cheek, carrying with it the distant scent of rain and moss, and the sensation feels like a gentle touch from the world beyond, a quiet reminder that the church is both a sanctuary and a bridge to life outside, where time moves patiently yet steadily. Your hands brush over the edges of carved pewends, tracing grooves left by countless fingertips, and each small indentation seems to vibrate softly beneath your touch, a quiet echo of devotion preserved across centuries, a gentle invitation to linger in awareness and patience. The interplay of sunlight and shadow creates a living tapestry across the stone floor, and you notice how the soft light moves imperceptibly, revealing details in carved reliefs and polished surfaces, as if the space itself carries a subtle heartbeat, steady, calm, and deeply patient. You inhale deeply, letting the scents of wax, stone, and faint herbs fill your senses, and each breath seems to carry the memory of prayers, footsteps, and devotion, blending seamlessly with your own presence, folding into the quiet rhythm that saturates the church with a sense of stillness. You pause near a small alcove where candles rest, flickering gently in soft shafts of light, and the subtle movement of flame casts delicate, dancing shadows on the surrounding stone, creating a quiet spectacle of warmth and calm that draws your attention like a tender lullaby. Finally, you step slowly toward the rear of the nave, feeling the cool stone beneath your feet and the warmth of sunlight mingling with shadows. And in that long, gentle moment, you allow the church's patient, centuries-held breath to merge quietly with your own, like a soft, enduring exhale. You step lightly across the nave, feeling the cool, worn stone beneath your feet, and the subtle texture beneath your toes carries the quiet presence of countless footsteps that have passed here, each one leaving a soft, lingering warmth in the floor. The faint scent of beeswax rises from distant candles, mingling with the subtle aroma of aged wood and stone, and you inhale slowly, letting the layered fragrance wrap around your senses like a gentle, protective shawl, softening the edges of thought and time. Sunlight falls through the tall stained glass windows in fractured ribbons of amber, rose, and pale green, and the dust motes drifting lazily in the beams remind you of tiny sparks suspended in air, suspended in the quiet memory of light and warmth. Your fingertips brush the carved edges of a pew polished smooth by countless hands, and each groove seems to hum faintly beneath your touch. A delicate resonance of devotion and presence folded gently into the wood, a quiet thread connecting past and present. A gentle breeze drifts through a narrow crack in the window, carrying with it the faint scent of rain-soaked earth and moss, brushing lightly against your cheek, as if the outside world leans in softly to acknowledge your presence, patient and without hurry. You pause near a side chapel, tracing the carved folds of an angel's robe with your gaze, noticing the softened edges and shadows that cling to each curve, and it feels as though the figure leans subtly toward you, offering quiet attention and gentle companionship. The arches curve gracefully above, high and luminous, and you notice the interplay of soft light and shadow along the ceiling, each subtle shift carrying a rhythm that feels slow and deliberate, like the measured pulse of the church itself, inhaling and exhaling in calm harmony. A candle flickers in a distant niche, its flame trembling like a slow heartbeat, and the shifting shadows stretch across the stone walls, revealing hidden details of worn carvings, as if the small movements of light carry life quietly through the stillness of the space. You kneel briefly at the altar rail, pressing your palms against the smooth, cool wood, and the faint warmth left behind by countless others seems to hum softly beneath your touch, a delicate bridge across time connecting your presence with centuries of quiet devotion. The gentle murmur of air through the vents carries echoes of voices long silenced, and you notice how the church seems to respond to your own presence. Every shadow, every polished surface, every carved relief joining in a soft, patient chorus that asks only for awareness and stillness. Your gaze drifts to the high altar, gilded edges dulled with age, and sunlight catches fragments of the polished surfaces, casting tiny points of color across stone and wood, as though the light itself remembers the care and devotion that has passed through this space. The scent of dried flowers rises faintly from a side niche, mingling with the faint aroma of candle smoke and stone, and you breathe slowly, letting the fragrances settle gently around you. A quiet reminder of delicate beauty preserved across centuries of stillness and attention. You pause at the choir stalls, noticing the worn polish of the wood where hands and knees pressed, and the faint echo of harmonized voices seems to linger, a soft resonance threading through the quiet, as though the building itself holds the memory of song in patient folds. Sunlight moves gradually across the nave, illuminating the dust motes and casting ever-shifting patterns across the flagstones. And you notice how the gentle movement of light mirrors the subtle rhythm of your own awareness, guiding your eyes along soft arcs of warmth and shadow. A faint draft brushes your cheek, carrying the distant scent of rain and moss, and the sensation feels like a delicate caress, a reminder that the church is both a sanctuary and a bridge to the life outside, where the slow passage of time continues in quiet harmony. Your fingers trace the edges of carved pew ends, feeling the tiny grooves left by countless hands, and each indentation hums faintly beneath your touch, a quiet echo of presence folded into the wood, inviting patience, observation, and gentle contemplation. The interplay of sunlight and shadow creates a living tapestry across the stone floor, and you notice how the soft light shifts imperceptibly, revealing hidden details and textures in carved reliefs, a slow, deliberate pulse that seems to echo the calm rhythm of your own breathing. You inhale deeply, letting the layered scents of wax, stone, and faint lavender fill your senses, and each breath seems to carry centuries of prayers, footsteps, and devotion, folding seamlessly into your presence and grounding you in the quiet flow of time within this sacred space. You pause near a small alcove where candles flicker in soft shafts of light, casting delicate shadows on worn angels, and the gentle movement creates a quiet spectacle that feels like a lullaby. Each flicker a tender reminder of enduring presence and subtle warmth. Finally, you step slowly toward the rear of the nave, feeling the cool stone beneath your feet and the soft mingling of sunlight and shadows. And in that long, gentle moment, you allow the church's centuries-held breath to merge quietly with your own, like a soft, patient exhale. You drift quietly along the nave, your fingers brushing lightly against the worn stone pillars, and the subtle grooves beneath your touch carry the gentle echo of countless hands that lingered here before, leaving traces of devotion folded delicately into the cool surface. The soft scent of beeswax rises from flickering candles, mingling with the warmth of aged wood and the faint aroma of pressed flowers tucked in niches, and you breathe slowly, letting the layered fragrances wrap around your senses like a quiet, tender embrace. Sunlight streams through the tall, stained glass windows, fracturing into soft hues of amber, rose, and pale green, and the dust motes floating lazily in the beams shimmer like tiny fragments of memory, suspended in the gentle hush that fills the sanctuary. Your gaze follows the carved edges of a pew, polished smooth by countless fingers and knees, and each curve seems to hum faintly beneath your attention, a delicate resonance of presence and care that threads softly through the air, inviting quiet reflection. A cool draft drifts in through a narrow window, brushing lightly against your cheeks, carrying the faint scent of rain-soaked moss, and the sensation feels like a delicate whisper from the outside world, patient and unhurried, mingling seamlessly with the church's still, steady breath. You pause at a side chapel, tracing the folds of an angel's robe in the stone relief, noticing the softened edges and shadows clinging to the curves, and the figure seems to lean subtly toward you, offering quiet companionship without expectation, just the patient presence of memory. The arches above rise gracefully into the vaulted ceiling, high and luminous, and the interplay of soft light and shadow along the stone makes it feel as if the church itself inhales slowly with the sun and exhales gently with the passing hour, a rhythm that invites calm. A candle trembles in a distant niche, its small flame flickering like a slow heartbeat, casting shadows along the worn carvings, and you feel the quiet life in the subtle movement, a soft acknowledgement that even in stillness, warmth and presence endure patiently here. You kneel for a brief moment at the altar rail, pressing your palms to the smooth wood, and the faint warmth left by those who knelt here long ago seems to hum softly beneath your touch, a gentle bridge across time connecting your presence to centuries of devotion. The faint murmur of air drifting through vents carries echoes of voices long silenced, and you notice how the church responds to your presence. Every shadow, every polished surface, every carved relief joining in a quiet chorus that asks only for gentle awareness and patient observation. Your eyes wander to the high altar, gilded edges dulled by age, and sunlight reflects off polished surfaces in delicate, shifting fragments, as though each ray remembers the care and devotion that has passed through this space, illuminating memory as softly as it illuminates stone. The scent of dried flowers rises faintly from a nearby niche, mingling with the aroma of candle smoke and warm stone, and you inhale slowly, letting the subtle fragrance settle gently around you, a quiet reminder that beauty and devotion persist here, tenderly preserved over centuries. You pause at the choir stalls, noticing the uneven polish of the wood from countless kneelings and hands, and the faint resonance of voices once raised in harmony seems to linger, threading softly through the silence, a gentle memory folded into the warmth of the space. Sunlight drifts gradually across the nave, highlighting patterns in the floor and illuminating dust motes, and you notice how the slow movement of light mirrors the subtle rhythm of your awareness, guiding your eyes and thoughts gently along arcs of warmth and shadow that unfold quietly. A faint breeze brushes your cheek, carrying the distant scent of rain and moss, and the sensation feels like a soft caress from the outside world, a reminder that the church is both sanctuary and bridge, where time moves patiently yet steadily, holding memory and presence in balance. Your fingers trace the edges of carved pew ends, feeling the grooves left by countless hands, and each subtle indentation hums faintly beneath your touch, a quiet echo of presence preserved in wood, inviting stillness, attention, and the slow appreciation of delicate, enduring care. The interplay of sunlight and shadow creates a living tapestry across the stone floor, and you notice how the light shifts imperceptibly, revealing hidden textures in carved reliefs, a pulse so gentle it mirrors the rhythm of your breathing, carrying your awareness forward without effort or hurry. You inhale deeply, letting the layered scents of wax, stone, and faint herbs fill your senses, and each breath seems to carry centuries of prayers, footsteps, and devotion, folding seamlessly into your own presence and anchoring you fully in the quiet, patient rhythm of the church. You pause at a small alcove where candles flicker softly, casting delicate shadows on worn angels. And the subtle movement of light creates a quiet spectacle that feels like a lullaby. Each flicker a gentle reminder of enduring presence and the slow, patient unfolding of time. Finally, you take a slow step toward the rear of the nave, feeling the cool stone beneath your feet and the mingling warmth of sunlight and shadows. And in that long, tender moment, you allow the church's centuries-held breath to merge quietly with your own, like a soft, enduring exhale. You linger at the back of the nave, letting your eyes travel over the worn stones, the polished wood, and the fading colors of stained glass. And the gentle quiet of the church seems to wrap around you like a soft, endless sigh held through centuries. The faint scent of beeswax rises from distant candles, mingling with the delicate aroma of aged wood and stone warmed by sunlight. And you inhale slowly, letting the layers of fragrance settle into your chest, carrying the calm of countless whispered prayers. Sunlight filters through the tall windows, scattering muted amber rose and green across the floor. And you notice dust motes drifting lazily in the beams, suspended like tiny fragments of memory, caught in a gentle rhythm that mirrors the slow pulse of your own breath. Your fingertips brush the smooth edges of the pews, worn by centuries of hands and knees, and each subtle groove hums faintly beneath your touch. A quiet resonance of devotion preserved across generations, folding softly into the wood, quietly acknowledging your presence with patient grace. A gentle breeze drifts through a narrow window, brushing your cheek and carrying the faint scent of moss and rain. And the sensation feels like a whisper from the world outside, patient and unhurried, mingling seamlessly with the slow, measured breath of the church itself. You pause near the altar, tracing the carved edges with your gaze, noticing the softened details of angels and saints, and each curve seems to lean gently toward you, offering quiet companionship, a subtle bridge across time, holding the weightless grace of memory in patient folds. The vaulted arches rise high above, catching soft light and shadow, and the interplay of illumination makes the stone feel almost alive, as if the building itself inhales slowly with the sun and exhales gently with every passing hour, offering calm to anyone willing to linger. A candle trembles in a distant niche, its tiny flame flickering like a heartbeat, casting slow, moving shadows across worn carvings. And you feel the quiet life in the subtle motion, a soft acknowledgement that warmth and presence endure patiently here, even in profound stillness. You kneel briefly at the altar rail, pressing your palms to the cool wood, and the faint warmth left behind by those who knelt here long ago hums softly beneath your touch, a tender bridge across time that carries you gently into the quiet lineage of devotion. The faint murmur of air through vents and narrow cracks carries delicate echoes of voices long silenced, and you notice how the space responds to your presence. Every carved relief, every polished surface, every shadow participating in a quiet chorus that asks only for gentle attention and stillness. Your gaze drifts slowly to the high altar, gilded edges dulled by age, reflecting tiny shards of sunlight across stone and wood. And each fragment seems to remember the care and devotion that has passed through this place, illuminating centuries of quiet reverence without effort or hurry. The soft fragrance of dried flowers rises from a niche, mingling with the aroma of wax and stone, and you breathe in deeply, letting the scent settle like a gentle shawl, a quiet reminder that even in stillness, delicate beauty and patience endure quietly, preserved in time's slow hands. You pause at the choir stalls, noticing the uneven polish of the wood where hands and knees pressed, and the faint echo of harmonized voices seems to linger, threading softly through the air. A delicate resonance of memory, folded carefully into the warmth of the still, waiting space. Sunlight shifts imperceptibly across the nave, highlighting dust motes and worn stone patterns. And you notice how the subtle movement of light mirrors the gentle rhythm of your awareness, guiding your gaze along arcs of warmth and shadow that unfold slowly, quietly, with patient grace. A faint draft brushes your cheek, carrying the distant scent of rain and moss, and the sensation feels like a tender caress from the world outside, reminding you that the church is both sanctuary and bridge, holding time delicately, where presence and memory coexist in tranquil harmony. Your fingers trace the edges of carved pew ends, feeling the tiny grooves left by centuries of hands, and each indentation hums faintly beneath your touch, a quiet echo of devotion folded into the wood, inviting calm, reflection, and gentle awareness of the enduring spirit within. The interplay of sunlight and shadow creates a living tapestry across the floor, and you notice how the shifting light reveals hidden textures and softened reliefs, a subtle pulse so gentle it mirrors your breathing, carrying your attention forward without urgency, wrapping you fully in the sanctuary's patient calm. You inhale deeply, letting the layered scents of wax, stone, and faint herbs fill your senses, and each breath seems to carry centuries of prayers, footsteps, and care, folding seamlessly into your own presence, anchoring you in the quiet, steady rhythm of this sacred space. You pause near a small alcove where flickering candles cast soft shadows on worn angels, and the delicate movement of light feels like a lullaby, each flicker a gentle reminder of enduring presence, the soft, patient unfolding of time, and the calm continuity of human devotion. Finally, you step slowly toward the rear of the nave, feeling the cool stone beneath your feet and the mingling warmth of sunlight and shadow. And in that long, tender moment, you allow the church's centuries-held breath to merge with your own, like a soft, eternal exhale, carrying you gently into quiet, restful memory.